Season 3 of Mythic Quest came out Wednesday. That means I'm a little bit late with my Season 2 breakdown. But it's here now. If you need a recap of Season 1, I have one of those as well. Season 2 begins with a blank slate. Poppy and Ian are now co-directors and they have a new expansion to work on, but where do they start? The two of them brainstorm new ideas for the now unnamed expansion. Both of them seem to have very different views on where to go. Ian wanting to do something on land while Poppy wants to do something at sea. Seeing that they won't be accomplishing anything that day, Ian decides to go to the desert and suggests Poppy get laid. This leads to her having a sex dream about him. Sex dreams with coworkers is always awkward, so Poppy decides to go to the testing girls, Dana and Rachel, for their opinion on this matter. After some beating around the bush, Dana instantly sees through this and guesses right about the dream, and even admits to having similar ones herself. This makes Rachel a bit jealous, but she explains it's more about power than sex. She might be having problems asserting herself to Ian, and that's what's causing the dreams. After this, Rachel goes to Carol, the HR lady, for advice about her potential budding relationship with Dana. She is worried that they might not be on the same sexual orientation, but Carol's pretty dismissive of this and says that she needs to speak to Dana, not her. Meanwhile, Ian up and leaves Poppy and David alone to fend for themselves. David needs a title for the new expansion before Montreal comes up with something terrible, which leads Poppy to come up with something on the spot, Sea of Ashes. Not the best name, but not super lame either. Joe is now assisting Brad, and they seem to be plotting something. David and Sue are having a discussion about their new title when Poppy comes in and tells them that they need to scrap the name. But David isn't happy and wants a name now. But Poppy is struggling with getting the internal Ian's approval in her dreams. There's also a funny mirror scene when Dana visits Carol for advice upon Rachel, and she pretty much tells him the exact same thing. She needs to be talking to Rachel, not her. During yet another sex dream with Ian, this time David is involved, Poppy comes up with a new title for the expansion, Titan's Rift. A much better name. Poppy tells David this, and David seems pleased and wonders if he left Ian satisfied. At the end of the episode, the tester girls finally get their kiss, and before the episode ends, it's revealed that even Ian has sex dreams about himself. Episode 2 starts with Brad and Joe looking at a potential new streamer to sponsor and mentions that they need to get into mobile games. The tester girls are officially a couple and they contemplate telling the office or not. That is until...
The tester's fucked!
Joe!
Newsflash, ladies. Whatever clambake bubble you've been living in has burst, and no one cares. Now, let's get to work!
Brad enlists the two testers to develop his new mobile game, which they gladly accept. He reestablishes himself as my favorite character with this line.
Absolutely nothing you do concerns me. Your personal affairs have zero consequence in the operations of this studio, and the fact that you think they do is both hilarious and upsetting. And yet I'm not laughing, nor getting upset, which only further demonstrates how little I care.
The two girls go to the mocap room and they have a fun time messing around with the different characters. This is when they come up with the name of their new game, Grouchy Goat. While this is going on, Poppy and Ian are terrorizing the art department with their ridiculous ideas. Poppy is having issues commanding the team as they seem to only listen to the inspiring Ian. So Ian decides to teach her how to inspire people the way he does. Meanwhile, the tester girls are busy at their game. Dana surprises Rachel with a test build of the goat, and it's absolutely terrible, but she doesn't have the heart to tell her. Joe decides to finally help her out and suggests that they get a backstory from CW. Part of Ian's training is to get Poppy ready for the Woman of Gaming convention. That involves getting Poppy dressed up and keeping her away from the crab toast. Ian tells Poppy to go against all of her instincts and not to deviate from the teleprompter where she has to read the prepared speech. While Poppy prepares for her speech, the ladies prepare for their presentation to Brad. Their Grouchy Goat presentation starts out with a heart-wrenching speech, but is instantly shut down by Brad when he sees how overcomplicated they are. Poppy's speech doesn't go as planned either. She has trouble reading the teleprompter, which prompts her to go on a tangent about how she is just sick of apologizing and doesn't know what people want. She absolutely breaks down on stage, which leads the crowd roaring in aspiration for the young Poppy. As the crowd is cheering, Ian reveals that it was all scripted. The putting on the glasses, the crab toast, everything. It was all planned by him. David reveals that Poppy got him to hire a new team of developers for her too, which makes the two of them realize that Poppy is smarter than she comes across. The next episode starts with Brad pitching the team on making a battle royale game because they're all the rage and he wants to cash in on it. David is worried when he sees Poppy and Ian work it separately and acting like there's no problems, even though they should be working as a team on the new expansion before meeting with Montreal. David is on the dating apps when Brad and Joe compare him to a loot box. Brad decides to help him find a match and commissions Joe to help CW with a breach of contract issue. He was supposed to deliver a book back in 1998. If you were wondering what the testers were up to, they're talking about their failed goat project. That is when Ian recruits Rachel for a special project. That leaves Dana to comfort Poppy, leading her to get a seat at the development of her new expansion. A big opportunity for someone trying to get into coding. Back to David.
Because you weren't embarrassed showing this to the entire world.
Hey guys, super excited because I just got my hands on the Canyon Grail CF SLX 8.0 gravel bike. Usually retails for about $5,000. I managed to snatch her up for $4,500, which was a bit of a coup. Dizzy Dave, steal of the week.
Okay, let's scrub all this shit, guys.
His dating profile is not so great, so Brad has a lot of work to do. He challenges David with seducing a video game character in a dating app. That doesn't go well either. It is later revealed that the dating software was actually a messaging software with real women that work at MQ, and after seeing it was David, the girls give their real opinion on him. After realizing he was a bit hard on David, Brad sets him up with a new dating profile and finds him a date. Joe isn't having much more success after flopping in front of the publisher, but after having an inspirational speech from CW about a sexual encounter in Taiwan, this is when she realizes that CW's brashness will be the greatest strength in the argument. She unmutes CW and lets them have at it. This grants him the extension needed. We find out the special project for Rachel was to be a replacement Poppy, but it isn't working, so Ian goes to Poppy to see if she wants to start working together once again. This is a rare time we see Ian admit that he was wrong, but it's too late. As the episode ends, it's revealed that Poppy broke down to Brad's persisting and made a battle royale, which Ian of course hates. The next episode is titled Breaking Brad, which is a fitting title. It opens with Brad and Joe basking in the battle royale's success when his brother Zach and David surprise him with a birthday cake. Brad claims it's not his birthday though. Brad is clearly frazzled by his brother's present and mentions a pig killing before heading into his office for hiding. His brother mentions that this might be due to Kate, which makes Joe question her idolized mentor. Zach's schmoozing of the boss David has Brad worried that he's after his job. While this is going on, Ian and the testers go out to save Poppy, who was having issues driving her new Porsche that was gifted to her from the studio. Ian, as it turns out, can't drive a manual vehicle and stalls out before leaving. This leads Rachel, the tester, to switch places with him. This was difficult for Ian to admit that he couldn't do something. He now has to sit passenger and listen to her rant about her relationship, which upsets Ian because she isn't taking advantage of the situation. She is sitting in the car with her boss, and instead of talking about her work aspirations, she's talking about drama. Zach surprises his brother with a live appearance by Snoop Dogg himself. This leads to the revelation that it really isn't Brad's birthday and he doesn't like Snoop Dogg. When the two brothers get a moment alone, Zach's true intentions come out. Brad was right. Zach is after his job. Joe sees Brad break down in front of his brother and goes after Zach to ask about Kate. Zach tells a story about when they were little boys, their father gifted them with a pig that eventually they had to slaughter. Brad couldn't kill his own pig, so Zach had to step up and kill it. The pig was named Kate. The next episode begins with Carol addressing a small group of employees who decided not to sign a simple HR paper. She is clearly upset that she is there after work hours and wants them to sign the papers. Looks like it might be a bottle episode, folks. Not a lot goes on physically in this episode, but more emotional. The papers were a test that determined which animal is closest to them. Most of them had issues with their animal besides Ian, who is there just to see what Poppy got. Ian received a lion and wants to prove that he's the king, but it's revealed that Poppy got a pass from the higher-ups and didn't have to take the test. Brad and Joe have some tension brewing since last episode. She is starting to see Brad the same way his brother sees him instead of the shark that he believes he is. They start weirdly circling the room and have a duel of words in the middle of everyone. This leads to them going their separate ways. As long as the employees don't sign, they can't go home. While the gang searches for food, David reveals that he's been classified as a wolf, and this totally changes his personality. We learn that he now has a girlfriend too. The tester girls have some drama of their own, as Dana wants to go to a university 6 hours away, which may cause some trouble in their budding relationship. When things start to get very awkward, Poppy enters. She is coming to take the test to make everyone happy. She scores a lion, and this causes even more drama. Everyone else is signed and left at this point but Poppy and Ian, who argue which one is the alpha. This leads to an emotional response from Ian, who admits his fears in front of Poppy, but she kinda just shrugs it off. The two of them clearly have a rift that keeps growing. As this episode ends, Ian walks out on Poppy after telling her off. Things are at their worst, it seems. Joe and Brad are no longer working together. Dana and Rachel may be dealing with a long-distance relationship. And Ian and Poppy are fighting right before the big expansion is supposed to be done. You would think the next few episodes are going to be extra juicy, but instead we get a look at CW's life and story. Similar to how they did in the season 1, they tell a completely different story separate from the main storyline. This story is how CW got involved in the making of MQ. It shows his journey as a writer as well. You just need to know, early in CW's writing career, he met two people where he became very close to, Peter and Ann. He ended up falling in love with Ann, but Peter and Ann ended up together. CW published another author's work and won an award for it. He decided to live a lie. In the next episode, Peter invites CW, who takes Rachel along as a chauffeur. Peter wants to reconcile before he passes away. CW still despises him and during their dinner gets absurdly drunk. They have a fight before learning that Peter is dying. When learning this, CW has a change of heart. After sleeping off the booze, they have a touching moment when Peter reads CW the last book of his series, who CW was a secret fan of. The next episode, titled Juice Box, returns to the main storyline and begins with Ian premiering his new part of the expansion, Zeus, which looks pretty epic in the presentation. That is until Poppy gives her presentation for Hera, which is, well, I'll have her explain it.
Imagine a world not built for you, but built by you. What would you build? What world would you want to see?
Hera, in theory, is very impressive. Permanent, consistent change in video games would be a game changer. But the presentation starts to take a turn for the worse when adding more people to the server, and she ends up blue screening the entire company's computer system. If you have any experience with computers, you know how frustrating of a problem that can be. While everyone is working on the issue, Dana is hard at work on coding. She's working on her application to Berkeley, and part of it is sending a test sample, so she is working on the Grouchy Goat from before. Rachel lets Dana know that CW inspired her to become a writer and she wants to pursue this as a career. She actually finds a class at Berkeley that she can afford and she wants to go with Dana. Poppy is trying to find a solution for Hera when she learns that Ian is in the hospital for having a heart attack. She visits him at the hospital and they have a conversation about their last fight. Ian apologizes and Poppy stays with him while he heals. He even asks her to rub his head. When the doctor comes in and tells him that it was just a faint from dehydration, Poppy doesn't take hearing this news lightly. She gets very upset. She finally thought that they had a moment where he was vulnerable. He asks Poppy for her real opinion on the expansion and she admits that it's basic and derivative. This conversation makes Ian cry and tells Poppy to leave. But she stays and rubs his head like he previously wanted. One big issue this episode is Joe admits to inside trading after being manipulated by Zach. He wanted to tank the stock so he can buy them at a bargain. This will probably be brought up in the next episode, the finale. This episode starts out with David telling Poppy and Ian that he proposed to his girlfriend and she rejects him. They are now separated, while Poppy and Ian reveal that they're back to working together. The tester girls decide to quit and pursue Berkeley, but Dana reveals later that she didn't get into the program. They beg Ian and Poppy for their jobs back, but instead of giving them the jobs back, they decide to send them to school under MQ's bill. Rachel decides that she needs to go to Berkeley and pursue that class though. Poppy finally gets Ian in on Hera and admits it's impossible. He says that if it could have been done, she would have already accomplished it. So they decide to call it quits on the program. The insider trading issue involving Zach from last episode gets Joe to recruit Brad's help, which is like making a deal with the devil. Here he mentions that jail time in his business is good. It raises their street cred. This is the reason he later calls the feds on himself and takes all the blame. By doing this, he's taking the bullet for Joe. he's going to be spending 6 months in jail to raise his street cred in the revenue business. Towards the end of the episode, they show the new Hall of the Past. CW brings them there and tells them that they should end Mythic Quest on a high note. Raven's Banquet was their masterpiece, and the end of the story. They go to David and they tell them that they're leaving Mythic Quest, but David doesn't take this news lightly. He gets upset about losing a couple of his close friends, but he does regain his assistant Joe. The episode ends with Poppy and Ian in a bar discussing where to go next. They decide to pursue Hera just through a different game. The two friends smile as Poppy draws on a bar napkin and the screen goes to black. It was uncertain for a while if this was the end of the show, but thankfully we know that it returned for a third season. Keep in mind that the quarantine actually caused them to rewrite season 2 in a rush. They had plans to go to E3, but they never happened. If you made it through the whole video, thank you guys so much. Please consider subscribing if you're new. I'll see you once season 3 ends for another breakdown later on the MinJ.